It's these two monsters, or kind devils, depending on how you think about them. It's their intersection when they start meeting each other that something amazing is beginning to happen and will continue to happen in the rest of our future. It's when we use machines to scan and understand our own genomes. In other words, other machines are helping this machine understand its biology, its future. That is an interesting moment in human history, bar none. No one can really, we've never come to that moment. People have called us a machine that's learning to decode our own instructions. Of course, that was the genetic code. But once another machine that we've invented, and think about this as an experiment, once another machine that we've invented begins to intervene on our capacity to understand our own instructional code, that's a little bit weird, So that's the place that I want to ultimately end up in. So rather than talk about things in the very, very abstract, I wanted to make it extraordinarily concrete and talk about these kinds of ideas. So I'll get a show of hands. Most of them is going to, but the first one's quite obvious. How many of you would like to know your future risk of cancer? I would imagine virtually everyone in this audience wants to know about future risk of cancer. Then comes a little bit more complicated question. How about the future height of your unborn child? How many of you want to know what height your child, still a fetus in your womb, the future height of your child is going to be? Any thoughts about that? Raise hands. So all of a sudden, that future risk of cancer, the genetic risk, and you now talk about the future height of your unborn child, things begin to seem a little unusual. Would you like to know the future risk of cancer or mental illness in your unborn child? Even if I was to give you very wide numbers, I would say between, choose a very wide range. How about mental illness? How many of you want to know future risk of mental illness in your unborn child? Look around the room. And finally, would you let a machine, as you sat in your bathtub, quietly scan you for ovarian cancer? Would that be perfectly fine? Or would you feel as if it's some kind of intrusion in your space? You don't know exactly. How many of you would be fine with a machine non-intrusively scanning you while you took a bath every day? Again, so these are not, the first question, very easy to answer. The second question, a little bit hard. And the third question also feels something as if something has changed in the way we think about ourselves. These are going to be the kinds of questions I'm going to handle in this talk. So I'm going to first start talking about deep learning, machine learning, extending its way to artificial intelligence. These are complicated words. People have moving definitions of these words. I'm going to try to keep it simple. And in brief, deep learning, this is not going to satisfy the aficionados of deep learning, but this is for sort of a lay understanding. It's deploying learning algorithms that imitate human learning. And so the question then becomes, what is human learning? What does it mean to imitate human learning? So in the classic example, this is one thing that's very obvious to us, right? There's no one in this audience who cannot distinguish these two animals and say that one is a dog and one is a cat. If you're having a problem, raise your hands because you have a special kind of intelligence. We need to understand your brain. But if you're having a problem, what's interesting about this picture, I purposely took this picture. This picture is of what's called a pugnacious dog, in which the forejaw is shortened. And in fact, if you were to draw an outline of this dog, remove the eyes and shrink it down, it would actually begin to look like a cat. Its jaw structure is actually cat-like. I'll show you more pictures like this in a second. So the question then becomes, how do we know, how do we learn to distinguish between dogs and cats so quickly? No one had to go through a process to figure it out. Well, in history, in the history of human learning, in the history of human understanding of our psyche, there were two kinds of models. They were described, one famous philosopher, Gilbert Ryle, described this as a distinction between knowing that and knowing how. Knowing that is factual declarative knowledge. The distance from the Earth to the Moon is a knowing that problem. You don't learn that experientially, you learn that by measuring it. The facts about how many the human population size is a knowing that problem. You have to actually measure it and you can come up with a number. But Riles made the argument, and subsequently other people made the argument, but that's not how human beings generally learn. We don't generally learn by stitching together facts and rules. So a great example is watching your child riding a bicycle. Your child doesn't go to the bicycle and say, this is a bipedalic device with 2 pedals on either side. If I push with that much force, it's going to go forward by those many meters. I'm going to have to balance my body backwards by X force, XYZ rules that will allow me to ride a bicycle. That's not how a child rides a bicycle, right? She gets on, she pushes a little bit, falls down, gets up again, pushes a little bit, falls down, and figures out over multiple iterations. And in the end, her body begins to naturally balance. When she goes up a hill, you've seen this, she tilts forward. She wasn't told, there's no rule book when you open a bicycle. There's no book in the bicycle, a manual that says, when you go up hills, please lean forward. Otherwise, there'll be a lawsuit against us, right? There's no such rule. So, knowing how is very much part of human knowledge. And this distinguishes between that. This is the sort of knowing that paradigm, which is where we were stuck in for years. Rules, one rule followed by next rule. If it has ears, and its nose is not this long, plus its eyes are close enough, and its fur looks like this, and it, etc., 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 then conclude dog, otherwise conclude cat. That would be like a dog versus cat manual. You get it when you were a kid. It would be mailed to your door, and you wake up and you say, today is dog versus cat learning day, and you open up the manual, and your child sits and says, okay, fine, no ears, plus this, mouse, no there, etc. But more and more we began to realize that our brains don't work like that. Our brains work by attaching experiential connections between objects and values. We add a little bit of, we take a little bit of having seen 15 cats. We begin to say, well, there's a gestalt. There is something captured in our brains. It's almost like changing, in the abacus, it's almost like changing the pattern of beads over time. One time it changes a little bit, another time it changes a little bit more, etc., etc., and then you begin to capture. This is actually an interesting image. This is from Facebook. This is the learning algorithm that was used. And these are the harder ones. So they start with very easy ones, dog, cat. These are the harder ones. Take this one, for example. This guy, actually the computer has a problem with in the beginning. For us, it's totally obvious that that's a dog having a bath. But the computer has a problem, but it figures it out over time. These are more obvious, and of course, so these are the first, this would be called the second level of training. And this captures this idea that it's not rule-based, it's experience-based. You learn something, you add it to a layer of experience or a layer of connections, you further add it to a layer of connections, and you move on to the final layer. You won't understand this today in this very short talk. But I think you'll get a feel for how these convolutional networks or how these networks work in terms of extracting information. And then things get complicated. This is a famous test. All right.
Muffin. It's a muffin.
It's my favorite slide.
It's definitely more.
All right. So which do you think, some of them are extraordinarily obvious, but which do you think the algorithm has the hardest time figuring out? I'll tell you a couple of examples. You can point out if you like. This one is very, very hard, especially this one when it's put next to this one. Some are very easy. This does not look like a dog. It looks like my dog, actually. It doesn't look like a dog. This one is hard. This one is hard. But some of them are extraordinarily hard, especially if you pixelate them a little bit. If you darken the background a little bit, they become very hard. This is a dog versus moth problem. And again, some it's easy, some the computer picks up very easily. This one is hard for reasons we don't understand, even though you and I can pick out, 2 eyes, mouth, face, etc. This one is actually, believe it or not, a dog with a ribbon on top. It's not a moth. If you said moth, you're wrong. Okay? But over iterations of time, it figures it out. And this one is actually, it's a quiz. This one's the hardest of all for the computer to figure out. What's this? Is this a cat or a dog? Raise your hands. Cat? Dog? Okay, and the answer is it is a dog, but when you ask yourself why, and if I were to ask you why, it's not clear why you use tech dog. Is it the quality of the fur? Is it the way it's curled up? Is it the fact that it's in this kind of basket versus another kind of basket? Does context matter? These are extraordinarily important points, and this seems like a kind of fun exercise, a joke. But when we start deploying real AI, when we start in human systems, in human information, these kinds of problems will come up. These are boundary problems, right? What are the edges? What are the edges of someone that we cannot fully understand in terms of their risk of breast cancer? Should we be telling them? Should we be screening them? Should we create all this anxiety around, telling someone that you have a risk, whereas in fact they don't have a risk? Again, questions about a future. You want to screen a future child for having an illness. Well, it's not 100%. It's going to be a number that rides somewhere between 0 and 100. What if that number was 57? And that number was 57 and I wasn't sure. And just on the edge, just on the border. So incredibly important questions that are coming your way. I'll give you now examples where all of a sudden it's not sort of lighthearted anymore. This is my friend Will Kiersky. Will Kiersky was a young man. I treated him as a patient of mine. He died about 8 months ago of a malignant melanoma. Now this is a picture of Will Kiersky taken 8 to 9 months before he was diagnosed. This is him at a wedding, and a casual picture. I dug this up with his parents, with his mom, and sure enough, you can see two things over here. Those were not noticed. Those were the two melanomas. One was a metastasis of the other, and had it been detected at that point of time, we would have resected this melanoma. By the time it was detected, it was fully metastatic. So this picture was mounted by Will on Facebook, and the question that kept going through my mind was, what if there was an algorithm that was scanning us, our own pictures, even what, let's say we gave consent, and telling us, go get that checked. Would that make us comfortable? And would it make us comfortable if we had to give consent, but there was some intrusion in it? The reason I'm telling you this is because 1 month after Will died, colleagues of mine working at Stanford made a very important paper. This was published in Nature, which took 500,000 melanomas versus benign tumors, fed them into this computer. It was a dog versus cat experiment, but now with melanomas versus non-melanomas. And in fact, over time, these were classified. Pathologists had looked at them, they classified them as a real melanoma, not melanoma, real, not real. And in fact, the computer began to become better and better. At a point of time, that was making very clear distinctions: not melanoma, melanoma, not melanoma, melanoma, based on these dermoscopic images, highly detailed, not like this, but highly detailed images. Now, what's important about that is two things. One is that the algorithm performs extremely well. Number two, the algorithm performs extremely well, and it begins to perform better than most dermatologists very quickly. And the scariest point that was made to me about this was that, remember when you teach a first-year dermatology resident how to distinguish between melanomas and non-melanomas, her case studies goes from 0 to 1, the first case. When you add one more image to the computer, its case study goes from 578,000 to 578,001. So in a world where both of them are using knowledge interfaces, who do you think is going to win? So that's an incredibly important idea, and I must emphasize, I've seen melanomas and cancers for a long, long time. I could not tell you for the life of me why this lesion, which looks totally benign to me, is classified as a melanoma, whereas this lesion that looks, actually this one, it looks extraordinarily malignant to me, is classified as benign, but the computer's right. That actual lesion is benign. It was never shown that lesion before. They figured it out based on this dog versus cat versus muffin analogy. Okay? But you can go further in, you can go deeper. This is the bathtub device, it's a prototype, looking for an ultrasound-based system to track you while you do something, a mirror while you do something, and look at this is an image of the pancreas, and it's looking on a day-to-day basis to see changes. The biggest question here, and it's an incredibly important question, I've written a lot about it, is will we end up diagnosing lots and lots of diseases and cancers that actually have no relevance They don't kill you. These are just incidental cancers. We've seen this with breast cancer. Mammograms pick up lots of cancers. These are called false positives or false negatives, depending on which direction. And we perform biopsies on them. We subject women to biopsies. Those biopsies lead to more tests, adds up money into the health system, and a fraction of them will not kill you. But on the other hand, how many of us are comfortable with saying, you know, let's wait and watch that malignant-looking lesion that's in your pancreas? Right? That's not an option either. So there's a natural pressure in the healthcare system. Once we indulge in screening technologies like this, we will start accumulating false positives, we will start accumulating false negatives, and there will be a natural pressure. It will actually cause costs to climb, and hopefully the payoffs will eventually decrease costs. These are very important, serious questions that we're facing. Overdiagnosis is the general idea behind this. So I just want to really emphasize that idea. We'll come back to it further. This is another extraordinary experiment. This was published in a journal of Alzheimer's disease, and it asked a very simple question. It took a, now it's being done through AI. It asked the question, can you teach a algorithm to pick up stuffer or nonsense nouns or fillers in the middle of a speech? So you're talking, and all of a sudden, you know, you start using a word that sort of doesn't make sense. It's a stuffer or a filler, or you pause before a stuffer or a filler. You've encountered this. You're some person, sadly, with a degenerate mind, starts using a word that's not exactly right. They correct themselves. Yes, everyone knows this phenomenon. Presumably, yes. So, two individuals, lots and lots of data from these two individuals, transcripts data, and on the y-axis, it's measuring the number of times these nonsense nouns or fillers are used. That thing, this object. Oh, you know what's the famous one is called whatchamacallit. How many of you use whatchamacallit? What's that thing? What's that gadget? Right? Okay. So who are these? This is one person with increasing risk. These are the number of transcripts. Increasing risk by the time they have 50, 60 transcripts, they're way up on this curve. The other person is flat on this curve. Any thoughts? Okay, this is serious business. This is Ronald Reagan towards the time that he was accelerating towards his degenerative disease, and as a comparison, George H.W. Bush, who obviously remained at least mentally intact, some people, across many years. Okay, but similar story. Pick up the phone. What if a device is recording what you're recording and gives you an index at the end of it? You know, you are at risk. Go see a doctor, go see a neurologist. Are we comfortable with that? Are we comfortable with a quiet recording on the phone? You know, you use the word whatchamacallit and all of a sudden, ping, a little thing goes up. Okay, I'm going to switch now to the human genome for the rest of the few minutes, and then I'll bring it all together. Everyone with me so far? Yeah. Craziest thing you ever heard. Okay, so things, again, with the human genome, things start simply and then they get extremely difficult and complicated, and this is what technology is. And while I'm talking, I want all of you to keep thinking, how is this going to change my particular line of work? I'm a coder. I sit and put health information in. I'm a nurse. I figure out how to help people. I'm a physician, primary care physician working somewhere. How is all of this technology that seems so far away? But if all of a sudden someone said, I have a device that will distinguish between melanomas and non-melanomas with a great degree of accuracy, is that going to change your life? It's going to change my life, that's for sure. Okay, back to the human genome. 2001, we have the draft sequence of the human genome, big publication. Your human genome consists, many of you know, 3 billion letters, ACTG. And if I was to put it in a standard print, it would be 66 full sets of the Encyclopedia Britannica. So the entire room here would be filled wall to wall with the Encyclopedia Britannica of a single person's genome. I could go to volume 45, you know, subsection 7, open it up, and I could read A, C, T, G, C, T. That's not a real sequence. I didn't memorize it. It would read something like that. And for the most part, in 2001, it was inscrutable. We didn't know what to make of it. Volume 55, page 73 was really just as little sense as volume 82, page 97, correct? So what has happened since then? What has happened since that time? Well, since that time, as I said, this part is called reading the human genome. I'll come to writing in a second. So reading the human genome means going to the encyclopedia and asking the question, what makes sense? How much of it makes sense? And in 2001, very little made sense. What did make sense? It made sense you could find that there are mutations, alterations in the alphabet that would predict disease. But they were usually single gene mutations that would predict disease. Cystic fibrosis, okay? Tay-Sachs disease, Huntington's disease, single gene mutations that are extraordinarily powerful and make a huge change in human physiology. If you have a mutation in the Huntington's disease gene, chances are 100% that you will have that disease, a lethal disease. It's the one that causes the chorea, the movement disorder, and you die from it. It's a consequence of that disease. So if I were to go to the encyclopedia, someone's encyclopedia here, the encyclopedia of an unborn fetus, you can sequence their DNA, I could pick out, and if it happened to be, if you open page 78 and you look with horror that there was the Huntington's disease gene in it, you would say, I'm sorry, this child has a 100% chance of dying of Huntington's disease during their lifetime. Again, very serious stuff, but limited to single, typically unusual genetic illnesses. Again, everyone with me so far? Yes. Okay. What has happened in the 10 years since that time is that we have become progressively and more committed and better at reading human genomes, not just for single gene diseases, but for multi-gene diseases, which include most human traits. Most human traits, how tall you are, the shape of your nose, the color of your hair, complicated things that we are still trying to understand, cognitive ability, potentially some edge or some amount of your sexual orientation. These are also genetically coded. They're absolutely modified by the environment. There is no doubt about that. A starving child will not reach the same height as a child who's not starving, even if they have the same genetic basis, as it were. So absolutely modified by the environment, but undeniably also has a genetic basis. So this is just a summary of what I said. Most human traits are controlled by multiple genes. Most common diseases would be therefore polygenic, not monogenic, not single genes. Many have genetic links, the exact genes are not known. And some combination of genes plus environments plus chance equals your phenotype or your trait, yourself, what you look like, what you feel like, what diseases you have, etc. So that's a biological word to describe that. Okay, so let's now say that we wanted to start giving genetic report cards to people. Okay, this is Brave New World again. We started giving genetic report cards to people, but we couldn't do this by telling you, because if you wanted to do it for Huntington's disease, single gene, extraordinarily powerful, relatively simple genetic report card. You would say, yes, you have the genetic mutation, your child has a 100% chance of developing this illness and dying during the next 20, 30 years, 50 years, 70 years of their lifetime, right? But now things have become more complicated because I can't say that for sure. I can say there's a propensity, there's a probability that you will have this illness. You have a mixture of breast cancer causing or breast cancer increasing alleles. There's a 60% chance. You have a fourfold likelihood above the general population of having breast cancer in your lifetime. Again, everyone with me so far, it's a very fundamentally, it's not an A plus B minus report card. It is, you might have gotten an A plus. You may get a C minus kind of report card. We don't want this for our children. Okay? So that's one thing, and the script is a little bit hard to read because it's white. I'll just say it. One thing that comes out of this is, again, a switch from few genes with very large effects, Huntington's disease, to many, many genes with very small effects. So now we're getting to the arena where 5,000 genes might interact, each nudging your risk a little bit, as opposed to Huntington's disease gene, which would be throwing something, shoving a person towards one disease state. So again, that's where we are. And so this idea is called, obviously, the movement from simple to complex genetics. The simple genetics, this is a family tree of a woman who has breast cancer, BRCA1. Many of you have heard of BRCA1, you don't need to. know it, but essentially this is a gene that increases risk of breast cancer. You can see it. Very simple or relatively simple genetic pattern. This woman died from it, had it. She passed it along to her daughters and sons. Two daughters got affected, maybe died from it. This woman passed it all further down through a son. In this case, passed it down to another daughter. So this is the typical family history. We've heard of these stories before, yes? Mom had breast cancer, grandma had breast cancer, sister, cousin died of breast cancer. We sequence the genome, find a BRCA1 gene mutation, then we have to figure out what to do about it. How do you insure this person? How do you protect their medical records so that insurance doesn't get into it and all of a sudden say you have a pre-existing condition, etc., etc. Simple genetics. But we also knew that there's something else lying out there which has complex genetics. And a classic example of that was human height. Human height, we know, is a genetic, I was going to say illness because I'm not very tall, but human height is a genetic trait. And we've known since, God knows when, Aristotle, that tall parents have tall children, short parents have short children, taking away nourishment and nutrition and disease, etc. All things other things being equal. We've known this for a very long time. But what we haven't known is, unlike in this example, breast cancer, we have not known how to control it, or what controls it. What are the various genes that contribute to human height? We haven't actually, so this was called the missing heritability of height. Heritability, because we know that it's carried by genetic information. Missing, because we couldn't identify exactly what the genes were. And we sat there for a while, stewing and scratching our heads, saying, I don't know what to do about this, until, and here comes the point, we started using those very same algorithms, the cat versus dog algorithms, in a new, more complex form, and unleashing them on our genomes. Asking the question, I can't understand this, but maybe the algorithm can. Maybe the computerized, maybe the deep learning algorithm can go into the genome and figure out how to attach weights. Just like it was attaching weights to, this much space between the nose and the eyes means cat, or that much space between the eyes and the nose means a muffin, or, as I said, my weird-looking dog. Anyway, so this problem was brewing for a while, and I thought to myself, gosh, this is going to be such a complicated problem, we'll never solve it, until this paper came along. This paper is still in preprint, because it's going to create an enormous series of waves. And it's a very simple paper. It takes, I don't know what the number is, 500, 600,000 human beings. Their genomes are recorded in a database, and their actual height is recorded in a database, nothing else. Whether you come from Antarctica, whether you come from, it's a limited group. I think it's all, actually, it's very ethnically non-diverse. But nonetheless, nothing else is recorded, not your postal address, not how much you ate, whether you had Wheaties in the morning, every morning, or whether you went to school with a cup of coffee. Nothing is recorded except for those pieces of information. And the computer is asked, figure out from the genome the height. And how does it do? Actually, it doesn't do too badly. This is the predicted height. This is the actual height. If it was exactly correct, the line would go exactly straight at 45 degrees. And it doesn't do pretty badly. Here's one individual, I popped him out. His predicted height was 170 centimeters. His actual height is 170 centimeters. Okay? Now, if this isn't sending a little bit of a shiver up your spine, it should. Because we are getting to a stage, again, where intimate information about who you are is going to become partly accessible. Those words are important. Intimate information, partly accessible to algorithms should we choose by consent to release them. And the consequences of this are enormous. I don't need to remind you, I'm sure, in every field that you work in, that once we start doing this, we start slowly entering a world that is not the world that we're familiar with, where a fetus can be diagnosed before the fetus is born with wonderful effect, important things. Who would not like to know their risk of ovarian cancer if we could screen for ovarian cancer before the tumor arrived? I would. I'm an oncologist, right? This is one of the things that I do. I worry about overdiagnosis, but I also worry about surveillance. I worry about what if this information leaked. I worry about how to code this information. I worry about how to tell people this information. You're a nurse. You're meeting someone for the first time. Not a very anxious woman, very anxious patient, very anxious man. And you have to tell them, I don't know for sure, but this algorithm is saying that we really need to follow up on your prostate. Okay? You get the picture. This I talked about already. So, and again, this I talked about already. We have its consequences for virtually every human disease, consequences for health maintenance, surveillance, and risk. We talked about the consequences for insurance. How can you insure a population when we are parsing every day with finer and finer grains the actual risk that this population may have for diseases? And I often say this, I talk about one version of this presentation to Congress, and I said, this is the most scientific rationale for universal health coverage. You cannot have a population that is fundamentally divided based on genetic risk, and then say, we're going to put a veil on top of them, and say, you get this much, you get that much. It doesn't work that way anymore. We're moving to a universe where this is becoming more and more of a concern. And this just gives you a sense. In type 1 diabetes, about 30 to 50 genes, but in really complicated illnesses, schizophrenia, this number is going to probably go up in the next, actually 3 or 4 months to about 2,000, height about 3,000 on genetic. Last few minutes, I'm going to talk about the final frontier of this, the youngest of these sciences. I talked about reading using computers. I talked about reading the genome, and finally, I'm going to talk about writing. Now, writing, of course, is the final frontier because thus far, we've been only passive recipients of information from the genome. We open the encyclopedia, and whatever's in the encyclopedia we read, we assign risk, etc. Well, here's the question. What if you could go to page 57 and change the word weather to heather? What if you could go to page 95 and change the gene that says increased risk of Huntington's disease and erase that? Now, this technology was also invisible to us because we didn't have the tools. Many of you know now, since the last, gosh, how many years? 5, 6, 7, 10 years, we have invented the tools. We have invented tools to go into the encyclopedia, and it seems to be working without much of a problem. You can go into the human encyclopedia, the human genome. There are ifs, ands, or buts. There are many things to be figured out in this technology. You can cross out a word, and crossing out a word is actually quite simple now. You can possibly replace that word with a new word. Everyone with me so far? Good. Okay. So this is a technology. It's called many things. It's called gene editing, gene surgery, genetic surgery. The basis of this is a technology called CRISPR-Cas9. I'm not going to belabor the point, but you can imagine this as a kind of extraordinarily fine molecular scissor that goes and detects, leafs through your encyclopedia, goes and finds your, the right page, the right word, and either cuts that word or chops that word. It's an editor, it's an editing module for genomes, not just the human genome, any genome. And it's really borrowed from the bacterial world. It came to us from the microbial world, and we've been becoming better and better and better using it. We're becoming better and better using it with human cells. Of course, like any editing program, what if it goes and changes the wrong word? Or like any editing program, what if the cell says, wait a second, why are you changing my genome? I'm going to figure out a resistance mechanism. Cells have the capacity to do this kind of stuff. These were some of the inventors. There's a huge list of inventors. Jennifer Doudna and her technician here. As you can imagine, this has been caught up in lawsuit after lawsuit. Who invented this one first? I'm not going to go into all the details of all of that. But this is just a schematic of this. There's a recognition module. Obviously, this doesn't look like there's no spanner. There's a recognition module, and that recognition module recognizes something in DNA and then uses its own technology to make a snip or a cut in it. And with slightly more advanced techniques, you can not just cut it, you can replace the information, switch it around, and change it to different information. So in this case, they're talking about the BRCA1 mutation. You could switch the BRCA1 mutation to the wild type form. Cystic fibrosis mutation, you could switch it out to the wild type form. And all of this would be, in principle, somewhat simple or somewhat in the air, an abstraction, but at the same time, as many of you know, embryology has been advancing. And you could say, well, why does that matter? It matters because this is a picture of a human embryological gonad, a sperm-producing arena, where you start having cells in the periphery, and they slowly edge their way, and these actually are human sperm being formed. This is being formed in a petri dish. This is from a colleague of ours sperm forming cells. Now here's the point. The point is that by the time you reach tens of thousands or tens of millions of sperm cells or egg cells, you can't go and change each one of them with these technologies, you know. Maybe in the future you could. But what you can do is these are sperm producing stem cells. You can clone those. You can isolate the one where you've made the change. You can confirm that the change has been made. And very soon, using techniques, you can start making sperm from them. And the sperm is genetically modified forever. You have now achieved a kind of backdoor to permanent human genetic modification. I'm sure that people in this audience will think this guy is completely crazy. But this is not true. I'm not completely crazy. These are techniques we are doing in our laboratory. This week, one of my researchers will introduce into a human cord blood stem cell, a cell that can give rise to the entire blood system of a human being, a CRISPR-based genetic mutation, thereby changing the cord blood stem cell forever. In about 3 months, we will apply, because I study leukemia, we will apply to the FDA to give us the first release of a trial to do this in human beings, children with cancer. So, I might sound crazy, but this is not So, just to finish up, I have only a couple of minutes left, but why does this matter? Why does all of this writing stuff matter? Well, it matters because you can imagine the universe of this split into 3 types. And every time you think about this, I want you to think about these 3 broad arenas, and you need to know what the differences are and why this is consequential, okay? So, again, you could gene edit in other organisms. You could make, and this is already, there was a big article in the New York Times yesterday about a fruit, one of the first fruits that's been gene edited, something called a ground cherry. I know what a ground cherry is. Ground cherry, you like ground cherries? Yeah. Apparently they're incredibly hard to grow. You can't find them, you can only find them in farmers markets, etc., because of some reason they fall off the ground because they grow somewhere. I couldn't care less. But it turns out you can change their genetic material using this technique, and now they grow very, very well. And now what do you make with ground cherries? Jam. Pie? You can make pies forever. You can set up a ground cherry pie factory. There'll be nothing to stop you anymore because we are now finding organisms. Anyway, that's genetic editing of other organisms, and you could say that's a strange new word, but remember, we could use them to make antibodies. We could use these organisms to find new ways to change human nutrition. The biggest scare here is biocontainment. Obviously, an ecological disaster. What happens if we unleash these organisms, they take over other organisms, and we unleash an ecological disaster? That's the biggest scare. It's a very, very, very legitimate scare. Among the first things that is going to be affected is mosquito genomes, and I'm told, I don't know how they figure this out, I'm told that mosquito is one organism that has no use in the human world. It's basically completely, it's only designed to be a pest for us. And that if you remove it, everyone will go home happy, except for the mosquito, of course. But so, apparently mosquitoes are on, it has no relevance in the food chain, apparently. I don't know if that's true or not, maybe they're just telling me to make me happy. Okay, the second arena is what we are doing. This is our study that will launch in 2019, and it's called somatic gene editing. Soma comes from the word body. And we are going to do this because we're going to change cells in the body that are not sperm, egg, and embryo cells. Anything else that is not sperm, egg, and embryo cells. And why does that matter? Because you can change them, but you don't reproduce them. They won't go into the next generation. Right? So it's limited to your body. We are changing blood cells for patients with leukemia. This is probably the single most exciting study that I've ever been involved in my life. And these are kids who have 100% mortality. So when we go to the FDA, we've said, it is not, we understand the potential dangers, but it is not as if there's another luxury. We are between a rock and a hard place. You have got to let this door open for us. And they're actually extremely sympathetic. Wouldn't you be, right? So the biggest concern there is safety. Safety. What if we create a cancer by mistake? What if we did something that was unintentional by mistake? So And the third arena is called germline gene editing. It's the biggest frontier, it's the final frontier, as it were. And that, of course, is to make changes in embryos, sperm, egg, and anything that goes permanently into the human genome. And I obviously don't need to tell this audience what the consequences of that are. That will mean that we will be making the first transgenic human beings. My suspicion is we will make transgenic human beings in my lifetime. I have no doubt whatsoever. The first transgenic human being. Again, everyone's thinking this guy's completely nuts. But I thought, I promise you, it'll probably be somewhere in Asia, given the differences in regulatory environment, but we will see that first baby being born just like we saw the first test tube baby being born in my parents' generation. Okay, finishing up. This was a report that came out of the National Academy to ask the question, what should we do now that we're at the brink of this frontier about to drop in? What should we do? I would encourage you, if you're interested, read the whole report. It's about 60, 70 pages long. This is probably the most important one in that report. It says basically the concerns are that we would diminish the dignity of humans, that we would diminish the respect for their variety. By the way, it's our variety, it's not their variety. And we would demonstrate a lack of humility if we were to go deeper and deeper and deeper. It's a very, very beautifully written report because it reminds us that on one hand, there are diseases that we'd like to solve, but on the other hand, we also have to respect the fact that human diseases and variation, tipping into disease, defines us. It's the vulnerability that we have within ourselves that defines us as human beings. We have grown up for millennia recognizing that some of us are going to be ill. And tending to people who are ill is part of who we are. We are not Klingons. It is a defining feature of our humanity to understand that other people are not made like us. And there's a danger in trying to remove genetic and other vulnerabilities that really begins to step on what it means to be human. These are extraordinarily important philosophical and cultural points that we are trying to wrestle with as we move forward. So there have been criteria that have been proposed for this. One is that we are only allowed to do this if there's extraordinary suffering involved. Huntington's disease, maybe cystic fibrosis. But obviously you realize that your definition of extraordinary suffering is not the same as mine. So who's going to draw that line? We don't know. No one has an understanding of that. Your child suffers enormously because of some genetic disease, but I look at that child and say, well, my child has an even deeper problem. This is human nature. Confidence in a gene and disease are so tightly linked that making single changes will make single changes in physiology. Again, sure that's the case, but sometimes the tight link is just a little bit less tight than you would imagine. Should we go into that or not? And then the final one, there should be no other justifiable alternative and no coercion. This is not a state mandate. We've heard, if you can read my book, The Gene, where we talk about the state mandates that happened in the 1910s and 1920s when women in particular were sterilized because they were thought to be genetically inferior, genetically imbecile. Famous story of Carrie Buck. That resonates, and then of course Nazi Germany resonates in the back of our minds when we start saying, let's make genetic changes in human populations. So, last slide. So what do I think about all of this? Well, on one hand, extraordinary powers to control human destiny by reading, writing, and surveying genomes and ourselves using deep learning techniques and genetic techniques combined with each other especially. Promises and perils of that, the somewhat concerns that we have. New and important anxieties about defining humans. Are we a vulnerable species? How much of that vulnerability is fundamentally part of ourselves? When we lose some of that, what we lose in ourselves, everyone here is taking care of a sick child, a sick parent, a sick friend, right? Imagine that the alternatives were different. Imagine that we were thinking about the sick or the ill in a fundamentally different way, as someone who needs modification, as someone who needs to be changed something. Advances in health, but a fear of total culture, the idea of total culture being that this culture subsumes us, it surrounds us, and starts telling us over time, in one generation, in two generations, starts telling us sickness is abnormal. Sickness is not normalcy. 5 generations ago, it was the only normalcy. And now it changes. But on the other hand, balanced against things that I care about. Detecting ovarian cancer early. Changing the human genome so that a woman is not living her entire life at risk of breast cancer. And of course, the final point, which I didn't emphasize enough, but you could, leave it as the final point about thinking. What if only some people could afford these technologies and others couldn't? We already have a split culture, split along class and race and other lines. What if the inequalities now became genetic inequalities in the capacity to access artificial intelligence or other forms of intelligence that we still are trying to bring into the world? What if only some people were surveyed, other people were not surveyed? What if the news leaked and all of a sudden what we thought was an equal footing became fundamentally unequal? So, covered a lot of ground. I thank you. I can imagine that all of you can find ways to connect this with your own work, and this is something that we all have to work through together. This is not a lab scientist, white coat, doctor question. It's the question about the stewardship of what it means to be a human being. Thank you very much.